The shimmer in the desert. Dr. Alan Moore wiped sweat from his forehead as the Arizona sun beat down on him. The Sonora Desert stretched out in all directions, a beautiful but harsh landscape of cacti, rocky soil, and scattered brush. Alan adjusted his wide-brimmed hat and crouched down to examine a small burrow in the ground. "Come on, little friend," he whispered, carefully using a thin probe to widen the entrance. "Show yourself." Alan had been tracking tarantula populations for 3 weeks now as part of his research at Arizona State University. As an entomologist specializing in desert arthropods, he had spent countless hours in these conditions. But today felt different somehow. The air seemed charged with an unusual energy. He looked up at the cloudless blue sky, squinting against the brightness. That's when he saw it, a shimmer in the air like heat waves, but more defined. Alan blinked, thinking it might be dehydration playing tricks on his eyes. But the shimmer grew larger, taking shape until a sleek silver object about the size of a small car hovered 30 feet above the desert floor. Alan stood frozen, his research forgotten. The object made no sound as it descended smoothly, kicking up a small cloud of dust when it touched down 20 yards away. It looked like nothing he had ever seen, no visible engines, wings, or rotors, just a seamless metallic surface with subtle blue lights pulsing along its edges. Then a seam appeared in the side of the craft, widening into an opening. Alan's heart hammered in his chest. He knew he should run or at least call someone, but curiosity rooted him to the spot. His hand trembled as he reached for the phone in his pocket. Before he could dial, a figure emerged from the craft. Alan gasped. It was clearly not human. The being stood about 5 feet tall with blue-tinged skin that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. It had 4 large eyes, 2 in the normal position and 2 smaller ones above them. Its body was slender, with 4 arms ending in 3-fingered hands. The creature wore a form-fitting silver suit that moved like liquid when it walked. "Dr. Alan Moore," the being said in perfect English, though its mouth, a small horizontal slit, barely moved. "We mean you no harm. I am Ambassador Krell of the Zirconian people." Alan struggled to find his voice. How do you know my name? What are you?" 2 more beings emerged from the craft, similar in appearance but with slight variations in skin tone and height. "We have been observing your planet for some time," Krell explained, approaching slowly with hands raised in what seemed like a universal gesture of peace. "Your internet makes learning about Earth's inhabitants quite simple. We selected you specifically because of your scientific background and what our observations suggest is a calm and analytical nature." Alan's scientific mind began to overcome his shock. "You're aliens. Actual extraterrestrial beings." "That is correct," Krell said. "We represent the Galactic Confederation, an alliance of species from across this sector of the galaxy. We have been debating whether to make official contact with Earth for several decades." One of the other aliens stepped forward, holding a small device that projected a holographic image of the solar system. It zoomed out to show a vast network of stars. "I'm Vex," this alien said, voice slightly higher pitched than Krell's. "Junior Science Officer. Your planet is here." A blue dot pulsed in the projection. "Our confederation spans this region," Vex said as a large section of the galaxy illuminated. "Over 200 sentient species participate in our alliance." Alan found himself moving closer, fascination overcoming fear. "This is incredible. Why now? Why make contact with me instead of our governments?" "Official diplomatic contact will come," Ambassador Krell explained. "But our studies show that sudden large-scale first contact often creates panic and political complications. We prefer to begin with individuals who can help ease the transition. Your species is still divided by nations and ideologies. A neutral scientific perspective seemed ideal." Alan looked back at his dusty truck parked a quarter-mile away, then at the alien craft. His entire understanding of the universe had just shifted dramatically. "What happens now?" "We invite you to join us," Krell said, gesturing to their ship. Our mothership orbits Earth beyond your satellite detection range. We would like you to see it, to learn about us, and perhaps serve as an informal ambassador while official channels are established. Alan hesitated. How do I know this isn't some elaborate hoax? Or that you won't experiment on me? The aliens looked at each other, and Alan had the distinct impression they were amused. A reasonable concern, Krell acknowledged. We can only offer you our word and the opportunity to witness something few humans have seen, Earth from orbit. You may bring your communication device and inform others of your whereabouts. We will return you whenever you wish. Vex stepped forward again. D'Armor, you study Earth's arthropods. Imagine studying life forms from dozens of worlds. The scientific knowledge alone would be worth the risk, would it not? That struck a chord with Alan. His entire life had been devoted to understanding the complex world of insects and arachnids. The chance to learn about alien biology was irresistible. Let me call my department head, Alan said, pulling out his phone. I'll tell her I'm taking some personal time. 20 minutes later, after a brief call explaining he was pursuing an unexpected research opportunity, Alan found himself inside the scout ship. The interior was surprisingly spacious, with curved walls that glowed with soft light. There were no visible controls, yet the ship hummed to life as the aliens entered. The journey will take approximately 40 minutes, Krell explained as Alan strapped into a seat that molded itself around his body. The takeoff was so smooth that Alan only realized they were moving when the desert floor rapidly shrank beneath them. Within moments they had passed through the clouds, the blue sky darkening until stars became visible. There was no sensation of speed or acceleration, yet Earth's curvature soon became apparent. My God, Alan whispered, looking out at his home planet. The blue oceans, swirling cloud patterns, and brown-green continents looked exactly like photographs he'd seen, but seeing it with his own eyes was overwhelming. Remarkable, isn't it? Vex said, joining him at the viewing port. Each world has its own beauty, but Earth has exceptional biological diversity compared to most life-bearing planets. As they approached what looked like a star growing brighter, Alan realized it was the mothership. It was enormous, at least a mile long, shaped like an elongated diamond with various structures protruding from its surface. Welcome to the Ascension, Krell said as their small craft approached a docking bay. Current home to representatives from 27 species, and your temporary residence, should you accept our invitation. Alan watched as the massive ship grew larger, his mind racing with questions and possibilities. In the space of an hour, he had gone from searching for tarantulas in the desert to approaching an alien mothership. Whatever happened next would change his life, and potentially all of humanity, forever. I accept, Alan said simply, his eyes fixed on humanity's future. Inside the Ascension. Dr. Alan Moore awoke to the soft glow of alien sunlight filtering through the curved walls of his quarters aboard the Ascension. He blinked against the unfamiliar warmth, not from a sun but from synthetic panels that mimicked Earth's circadian rhythms. The Zirconians had gone to great lengths to make his temporary residence comfortable, gravity matched to Earth's, oxygen-rich air with just the right nitrogen balance, and even the scent of pine embedded subtly in the recycled ventilation system. He rolled out of bed and stretched. For the last 5 days, his schedule had been a whirlwind. Tours through areas he could only describe as biological cities, meetings with representatives from dozens of species, each one more fascinating than the last, and long, recorded sessions with Vex, who remained a bundle of polite excitement and analytical precision. As Alan dressed in a soft, iridescent tunic the Zirconians had tailored to fit him, he reviewed the day's itinerary. This morning, he would be visiting the exchange chamber, a massive hall dedicated to interspecies learning. There, he would share a curated digital archive of Earth's biodiversity with scientists and cultural observers from across the Confederation. Alan had selected visuals of rainforests, coral reefs, and the migratory patterns of birds. Nothing too aggressive. Nothing too terrifying. Vex greeted him outside the door, all 4 eyes blinking in unison. Greetings, D'Armor. You are rested? Very, Alan replied. You weren't kidding when you said the sleeping platforms adjust to muscle tension. That was the best sleep I've had in years. Vex's upper left eye twitched in what Alan had come to recognize as amusement. The Ascension's medical matrix monitors all crew and visitors. We strive to keep our guests comfortable. Today's exchange event will be attended by representatives from 14 worlds. I'll try not to embarrass my species, Alan said dryly. They walked down a translucent corridor. Beneath their feet, hexagonal plates flickered faintly with color as they stepped. Other beings passed them, some gliding, some loping on four limbs, some levitating in containment spheres filled with gas or liquid. Alan tried not to gawk. The only thing more overwhelming than the biology was the civility, the quiet, respectful communication, the unspoken coordination of space and movement. Everyone flowed like a single body. Today you'll meet Draeran scholars, Vex said as they reached the exchange chamber. They are extremely interested in predator-prey cycles, which are quite rare on their home world. Draeran, Alan repeated. The reptilian species with chromatophores in their skin, right? Vex nodded. They communicate partially through color. Emotional transparency is a cultural norm. Their scales reflect states like calm, confusion, even shame. Inside the chamber, the ceiling arched high like a cathedral, but the surfaces were fluid, shifting in gentle ripples of color and light. Several aliens were already gathered. Alan immediately spotted Silt, tall, lean, his body covered in glistening scales that shifted from green to indigo as he approached. "There more," Silt said, bowing slightly. "It is a privilege to learn from a biologist of a predator-rich world." "Thank you," Alan said. "It's an honor to share. I brought a presentation on Earth's ecosystems. Diverse environments, non-sentient species interactions, that sort of thing." Vex activated a projection node, and soon, holographic scenes of Earth bloomed into the air, birds of paradise performing mating dances in the New Guinea canopy, wildebeest crossing croc-infested rivers, deep-sea creatures glowing in the abyssal dark. Alan narrated each segment. When a leopard pounced on a gazelle, Silt's scales shifted to orange, not fear, but intrigue. When a moray eel lunged from a coral crevice, a small, bubble-encased species watching from the gallery spun in place, its body undulating in apparent astonishment. Earth's biosphere has one of the most complex food webs known, Alan explained. We have cooperative relationships, parasitism, predation, mutualism. Cooperative hunting, Silt echoed, as a clip showed orcas coordinating to flip a seal off an ice floe. This requires planning. Correct. The behavior is inherited, but also taught socially. Whales pass strategies between generations. This, a new voice said, from the far side of the chamber, is difficult for many of us. Your planet's lifeforms seem relentless. Survival through overwhelming adaptation. Alan turned. A being floated toward them, composed of fine, iridescent filaments suspended in a containment field. It spoke through a translator collar. "I'm honored to answer any questions," Alan said. "Do all your species fight to live this way? Feed by destroying others?" Alan hesitated. "Not all. There's beauty too. Look here." He switched to a clip of a sea anemone and clownfish, symbiosis. Then to bees pollinating flowers. Bonobos grooming each other. Earth's life is a spectrum, Alan said. From brutal to nurturing. We aren't one thing. We're many. Silt tilted his head, his scales glinting blue. "I would like to understand this balance more. Might we study your smaller lifeforms next? The ones you said comprise most species?" Alan brightened. "Insects? Absolutely. That's my specialty. Tomorrow, I'll prepare a focused presentation on invertebrate adaptations." Silt's scales flashed emerald, eager curiosity. Vex touched Alan's shoulder lightly. "You've made quite the impression today, Dr. Moore." Alan allowed himself a smile. For the first time, he felt not just like a guest, but a contributor. But as they filed out of the chamber, he couldn't help but glance back. Some of the visitors hadn't stayed for the full presentation. One or two had left early, their body language tense. Not everyone was comfortable with Earth's savage beauty. "I'll be careful what I show next time," Alan muttered under his breath. He had no idea that tomorrow's presentation, a simple overview of parasitoid wasps, would shake the Confederation to its very core. The wasp incident. The exchange chamber was fuller than usual. Vex had warned Alan that word had spread about his presentations. Beings from multiple delegations were attending now, some out of scientific curiosity, others out of cautious fascination with what they were starting to call the Death Planet. Alan stood in the center, the same projection node waiting at his side. He wore the same neutral-tone tunic, though today he had requested a darker variant. For some reason, he felt like what he was about to present would need a somber backdrop. "Good morning," Alan began. His voice echoed lightly in the high-ceilinged space. As requested, today's topic focuses on a subset of Earth's most abundant creatures, insects. Specifically, the wasp family. Several beings perked up. The Draeran contingent had grown in number, and now filled 2 rows with their shimmering, scale-patterned ranks. Vex stood just behind the projection controls. Nearby, Ambassador Krell had made a rare appearance, quietly observing from a balcony alcove with several council aides. Alan activated the feed. A trio of floating holograms appeared, honeybees pollinating a flower, an ant carrying a leaf, and a black and orange wasp hovering midair. Many insects engage in social behavior, or work symbiotically with plant life. But today, I'll be focusing on a species called the tarantula hawk wasp. He zoomed in on the last hologram. Its metallic wings and glistening abdomen shimmered as the image rotated slowly. Alan switched to a high-definition video clip. This footage was captured in southern Arizona. "What you're about to see is real." The hologram came to life. A tarantula moved along the desert floor. Suddenly, a wasp darted in, circling the spider in calculated strikes. It feinted once, twice, then dove. The sting landed. The tarantula convulsed, then went still, its limbs curled in. Alan explained, the wasp injects a neurotoxic venom that paralyzes the tarantula. It remains alive, but entirely helpless. A few whispers broke out. Some beings had shifted in place. Alan continued, voice steady. The wasp then drags the immobilized spider to a burrow. She lays a single egg on the spider's abdomen and seals the chamber. "And the spider remains alive?" someone asked, their voice distorted through a translation device. "Yes. The egg hatches into a larva, which feeds on the spider, but in a very particular order, first the non-vital tissues. The spider lives for days, sometimes over a week, as it's consumed." The room had gone silent. Utterly, unnervingly silent. Alan looked around. Vex had turned slightly paler, his skin a glassy sheen of pale blue. Silt's scales were rippling in pulses of gray and violet, uncertainty, stress. "It's just instinct," Alan offered. "Not malice. The wasp doesn't think or feel malice. It evolved this behavior through natural selection." A piercing alarm rang out. Ambassador Krell stood instantly, speaking rapid Zirconian into a communicator. The council aides were already moving. Vex stumbled forward. "Alan, stop the feed. Now." Alan fumbled with the controls. The images blinked off. But it was too late. A display screen at the rear of the chamber activated, showing multiple news feeds from across the Confederation, images of the wasp dragging the spider, broadcasted to thousands. Krell turned, all 4 of his eyes wide. The presentation was auto-streamed across science and diplomatic networks. "Alan, this is catastrophic." Beings were standing, backing away. Several of the more empathic species began convulsing or curling into fetal positions. Even the stoic Draeran contingent looked frozen in a mix of awe and horror. Silt spoke at last, voice rasping. You keep it alive. You keep it alive while feeding on it. You consider this normal. Alan held up his hands. It's an evolutionary mechanism. It's common. There are hundreds of parasitoid species on Earth. This isn't sentient torture, it's survival. Krell stepped forward, visibly shaken. Do you understand what you've done? This biological footage is being interpreted as a moral threat. Your planet is now seen as a vector of nightmare. But it's not, Alan said desperately. It's just biology. More alarms blared. The chamber lights changed to red. Vex touched his communicator. Confederation High Council is convening emergency session. There are already calls to quarantine Earth. Krell nodded grimly. All ships are being instructed to prepare for immediate withdrawal from Sol System. Alan stared at the darkened projection node. In his desire to educate, to amaze, he had shown a part of nature he found fascinating. But to the Confederation, it had become something else. Please, he whispered. Let me explain. But no one responded. The galaxy had already begun to retreat. The Council decision. Alan sat alone in a sterile observation room on the upper tier of the Ascension, a place he hadn't seen before. The room's walls were soft glowing, shifting colors that subtly adjusted with his stress levels. They pulsed a low amber now, the Confederation's way of simulating calm. He wasn't calm. Outside the glass, he could see the Central Council chamber of the Zirconian High Command. Towering platforms formed a ring of 13 seats, each occupied by a representative of a member species. Ambassador Krell stood before them, his usually composed posture stiff and tremoring. Vex was beside him, holding a display node. Silt sat further back, silent, his scales flickering dark blues and greens in slow, uneasy waves. Alan could hear only fragments through the sound panel. Alien languages filtered into translation, psychosomatic trauma, empathic collapse, predatory contagion risk. He slumped into the curved seat, watching helplessly. Then a soft chime. The door opened. Krell entered, alone. The Council has voted, the ambassador said. His voice was leaden. They have issued a full quarantine on Earth. All Confederation ships are to depart within one solar rotation. Contact is suspended indefinitely. Alan's mouth went dry, but, why? I explained everything. I told them it's just nature, not evil. They do not dispute that, Krell said. But it changes nothing. To them, the imagery of what your world evolved, the wasp, the spider, is more than discomforting. It violates ethical constructs foundational to many of their civilizations. It's a biological mechanism. To you, Krell replied. To others, it is horror manifest in instinct. And perception matters. Alan stared past him, into the chamber where the Council now stood to recess. So that's it. They're just going to leave. Yes. For how long? Krell hesitated. The standard quarantine cycle is 50 rotations. Years? 75 of your Earth years. Alan sank lower into his chair. I'll be dead. We'll all be different by then. Perhaps, Krell said. Or perhaps not. This device. He held out a compact crystalline tablet. Contains a curated set of Confederation data, histories, languages, and ethical frameworks. It has been approved by the Council for terrestrial decryption. A parting gift. Alan took it with trembling hands. What am I supposed to do with this? Prepare, Krell said. Educate. Inform your people not just of the stars, but of what lies within them, the minds that judge, the eyes that recoil. And they're sure. About this quarantine? Yes, Krell said. Even the Draren voted in favor, though reluctantly. Alan looked up. And you? What did you vote, Krell? The ambassador's pause was all the answer he needed. In the shuttle bay, the atmosphere was tense. Dozens of alien crew members were hurriedly packing crates, securing transports. The Ascension looked less like a beacon of diplomacy and more like a fortress abandoning the field. Vex approached as Alan was escorted to his return shuttle. "I'm sorry," Vex said quietly. "I learned more from you in days than I have in years." "You should come back one day," Alan said. "See the fireflies. The symbiotic fungi. The leafcutter ants. We're more than predators." "Maybe someday," Vex replied. "But not soon." Silt stood nearby, silent until now. His scales shimmered a reflective black. "Do not think we hate your world," the Drairan said. "But we fear it. That fear outweighs our curiosity." Alan gave a slow nod. "Sometimes I fear it too." Vex raised a hand in farewell as Alan boarded the shuttle. The doors closed with a hiss. As the engines lifted him away, Alan looked out one last time. The Ascension was already retracting its docking arms. Other ships peeled away into the void. The Confederation was gone. And Earth, still spinning in silence, had been judged. The report. 3 days after the Confederation's evacuation, Dr. Alan Moore sat in a featureless concrete room inside a classified facility somewhere in Nevada. The walls were windowless. The air smelled faintly of recycled climate control and polished steel. Across from him sat Dr. Nancy Hill, recently appointed director of the International Extraterrestrial Contact Committee. Beside her stood General Frank Wilson of the U.S. Joint Command. Both had reviewed Alan's story multiple times. Both had the crystalline tablet the Zirconians left behind. Hill tapped a pen against her notepad. "Let me summarize. You showed the aliens a video of a wasp paralyzing and laying eggs on a live spider, and that caused them to flee the planet and quarantine us for 75 years. Alan, exhausted, nodded. "Yes. And at no point did you think this would be disturbing?" "Not like that. In our culture, we air worse on nature channels. But to them, it wasn't just disturbing, it was something existentially wrong." Wilson grunted. "They call it, what was the term again?" "Soul corruption," Alan said. "Or living nightmare. They have no equivalent for such behavior in their evolved ecosystems." Hill sighed, setting her pen down. "We've analyzed their data tablet. It's real. Their tech is centuries ahead of us. The energy mapping, the self-contained environmental systems, even their diplomatic protocols are precise and deeply interconnected. And now we've been blacklisted from it all," Alan added. "Because of a wasp." "Because of what that wasp represented," Hill corrected. "And how we presented ourselves." Wilson leaned forward. "So what now? Do we go public with this?" Hill hesitated. "Not yet. We need time to absorb what's been shared. If we go public now, the panic would eclipse the opportunity." "Opportunity?" She turned to Alan. "That's why you're still here, Dr. Moore. You've been handed the most significant cultural archive in human history. Your job is to understand it, translate, contextualize, and prepare us. For the next time." Alan leaned back, eyes heavy. "If there is a next time." "There will be," Hill said softly. "History is full of first impressions gone wrong. It's what we do next that matters." Later that night, alone in his assigned quarters, Alan activated the crystalline tablet again. Holographic glyphs bloomed into the air, languages, ethical codes, holograms of alien cities, philosophies, symbiotic rituals, peacekeeping oaths. He opened a file labeled Krell, personal note. To Dr. Alan Moore, the recording began, "You are not at fault. You were honest, and honesty is a rare thing in our galaxy. I believe you, and someday others may too. Study what we've shared. Show your people. And when they are ready, when they can meet us without fear in their hearts or death in their documentaries, we will return." Alan closed the file, his eyes burning. He stepped to the windowless wall and touched it. Outside, beyond the layers of concrete and protocol, Earth turned slowly beneath the stars. The galaxy had left. But it had also left a door ajar. The end.